Spider-Man Far From Home is the latest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and at 129 minutes is one of the longer non-event films in the franchise thus far. But just as any movie, Far From Home went through various changes and re-edits throughout its production, with many completed scenes and concepts dropped from the final product. In this video, we'll take a look at the trailers and cast and crew interviews in order to get a good idea of what very nearly could have been seen in the film, including additional action sequences and character cameos. Before we move on any further, as this video does focus on the newly released Far From Home, it will include some spoilers. With that, let's swing into it. Firstly, there were a number of pretty substantial scenes in the film's trailers that didn't make the final cut of the film. However, unlike some of the Endgame trailer scenes, these certainly weren't fake psych-outs shot specifically for the trailer. The film's director, John Watts, recently spoke to comicbookmovie.com and detailed a montage sequence titled Peter's To-Do List, which originally took place at the beginning of the film and saw Peter running a bunch of errands before taking off on his holiday. The scene is said to have been around 10 minutes in length and simply slowed the film down.
It was one of those things where it was a really fun scene, but it didn't really move the story forward, and we basically just wanted to get the kids to Europe as quickly as possible.
During the montage, Peter was set to pick up some amenities, including that headphone adapter he plans to use on the plane with MJ at Delmar's Deli, seemingly rebuilt following Homecoming. He would also head out to pick up his passport from the post office.
Peter Parker here to pick up a passport, please.
And then head to a pawn shop to sell off a bunch of Star Wars figures to get money for the trip and pay for a gift for MJ. I'm assuming these were likely vintage figures which would be worth some decent money depending on the condition, and explains how Peter paid for that expensive necklace. In the scene, Peter would sell all of his figures bar one which he refused to sell. This figure was later confirmed to be Lobot by Marvel head honcho Kevin Feige, who had insisted the figure be included in the sequence but gave no explanation why. Finally, the sequence would also see Spidey take down a giant crime syndicate, which Tom Holland confirmed to be the Manfredi family in a recent interview with BBC One. The Manfredi crime family is of course a crime syndicate from the Spider-Man comics, which is led by Silvio Manfredi, aka Spider-Man villain Silvermane. The scene was shown quite prominently in the main trailer and is the only sequence in the film that would have shown Peter fighting in the Iron Spider suit, though we did see him wearing it very briefly. Upon being asked why this particular scene wasn't in the film, Holland would also tell Uproxx that he thought they just didn't need one more action sequence, considering the film offers a plethora of them already. One piece of great news, however, is that the montage scene could still be canon, with both Watts and Holland having confirmed that the sequence will be included on the film's Blu-ray release in its entirety, repurposed as a short film titled Peter's Wishlist according to Watts, or Peter Parker's Errands according to Holland. I'm certainly looking forward to checking this sequence out on the Blu-ray, as it looks like we could finally have a return to the great Marvel one-shots that we used to get alongside the Phase 1 and 2 movies. One major influence on Far From Home was of course Avengers Endgame, the major event film which released only a couple of months prior and changed the MCU's entire fabric. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, the film's editors Lee Boyd and Dan Lebenthal revealed that they actually had to make a few last-minute changes when they were screened Endgame a considerable amount of time into the editing process. Lebenthal noted, "At a certain point we had our conceptions of what Endgame was, but then I saw it. Okay, we need to make a few adjustments," with Boyd noting that she had originally been under the impression that all of the Avengers died at the end of the film. Lebenthal would also say that after finding out that only Stark and Romanoff died in Endgame, Far From Home's tone had to be made slightly lighter. While the two didn't go into any more details, it seems there could actually be a practically completed, slightly darker, less canonical version of the film out there somewhere. Interestingly enough, the film's writers Chris McKenna and Eric Summers knew of Stark's death and the 5-year time jump while writing the film, and Watts was kept updated throughout the filmmaking process. It's certainly interesting to note how late into the filmmaking process these movies can change. While pre-release rumours swirled online that we get cameos or appearances from the likes of Doctor Strange, Gwen Stacey, Norman Osborn, the Vulture, Scorpion and other members of the Sinister Six, Jessica Drew aka Spider-Woman, and some even suggested that various X-Men characters could have been introduced into the franchise by way of the multiverse. Some speculated that a Stan Lee cameo had been planned for the film but was scrapped after he passed away, but Watts has squashed these rumours recently, noting that it was pretty evident quite early on that the film would be without one. Obviously, the Stan Lee cameo was not the only one that didn't eventuate in the film. When asked about whether characters like Osborn and Stacey were ever considered for the film, Watts told comicbookmovie.com,
"It's just a question of what is the best idea for the story that we're telling, and hopefully the best idea always wins. But what's exciting about working with Marvel is that, you feel like every idea is always on the table."
One such cameo would have seen the introduction of Brian Braddock, aka Captain Britain, to the MCU. Captain Britain is, as you can imagine, the UK's answer to Captain America, the superpowered protector of Great Britain and the multiverse, receiving his interdimensional energy from the great sorcerer Merlin. In the same interview with comicbook.com, Watts also revealed that discussions to include Captain Britain certainly happened. Especially considering the majority of the film takes place across Europe, it would have been a no-brainer. Watts would note that they simply couldn't find a clever way to incorporate the character, saying that they likely would have if they found something that stood out, instead feeling that every idea they brainstormed felt like a shoehorned reference. Regardless of this, it's also worth noting that an Agent Braddock was mentioned by Peggy Carter in the time travel sequence of Avengers Endgame. So it is quite possible that Captain Britain is out there somewhere ready to make his big appearance. Miles Morales, the Ultimates version of Spider-Man, who recently appeared as the leading Spidey in Into the Spider-Verse, was also a contender to appear in Far From Home, with Watts, an enormous fan of Morales, recently telling Business Insider that he wanted to tackle his story, noting that he was jealous to see Sony Animation beat him to the punch. When asked whether he could see Morales making the jump to live action eventually, Watts exclaimed, "I think so." Other reports have stated that Morales certainly was being queued up to appear in the film, but given the release and major success of Spider-Verse, which grossed nearly $400 million worldwide at the box office and went on to win the Best Animated Feature Oscar at the Academy Awards, Marvel and likely Sony wanted to give the character a bit of breathing space. As Watts hinted, I certainly wouldn't count out seeing Miles on the big screen sometime in the future, especially given that his existence was set up in Homecoming with the appearance of his uncle Aaron, played by Donald Glover, who has a large role to play in his origin story.
Yeah, sorry, Miles, I'm not gonna make it.
It's also very possible that we just missed out on the appearance of some of our favourite Asgardians, with Watts mentioning to comicbook.com that early discussions even entertained the idea that Peter's school trip could make a detour to New Asgard as they travelled through Norway. It's unlikely that Thor would have made an appearance, considering that he seems to be off in space with his new clan, the Asgardians of the Galaxy, but new Queen of Asgard Valkyrie and sidekicks Korg and Miek could have been prime contenders. The biggest "it almost happened," however, came in the form of Sam Wilson, aka the new Captain America. Also speaking with comicbook.com, executive producer Eric Carroll mentioned, "We briefly talked about bringing in Falcon as Captain America at the end, like maybe once Peter's arced and he's sort of like leading the team, like maybe he calls in a favour." Carroll would go on to say that they eventually moved away from the idea when they realised it would be really important to Peter's arc that there not be other Avengers available so he could learn to step up and do it for himself. Kevin Feige would also go on to say, "It's all about Peter stepping up and getting out of the shadow, not just of Tony but of the Avengers in general." This would have been a really fantastic cameo to see and would have given us our first look at Sam Wilson's Captain America in the MCU. However, it is understandable why this was next in the end. And just as it is important for Peter's arc to be self-centered, perhaps our first look at the new Cap would be better off left for his own arc in the upcoming Disney Plus limited series Falcon and the Winter Soldier. With Far From Home's art book not being released until October, we don't have any concept art to look upon to get a greater insight into deleted concepts and scenes. So that's it for now. It's certainly interesting to hear how many big things were planned for the movie before it was stripped back to its emotional core, a true hallmark of MCU features. And though I would have loved to see some of these ideas come to fruition, I'm kinda glad they didn't. In Tom Holland's words, there's always Spidey 3 or 4 or 5. How about you guys? What would you have liked to have seen in Spider-Man Far From Home? And do you think Marvel made the right decision to either delete or not develop some of this material? What of this bunch of stuff would you have liked to see most of all? Fire away in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos and you'd like to see more like it in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen, as well as that like button down below for that little extra support. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic day.